I am Arya Voss, 28 years old, and I'm an accountant. My fingers were smeared with damp potting soil when my phone vibrated. I was helping my grandmother, Alina, coax a stubborn orchid into a new pot. She worked slowly, carefully, as if the flower might shatter if rushed. I glanced down at the notification. It was from my mother, Susan, on our way to Panama. Transferred funds from the trust for our fresh start. Take care of Alina. My stomach tightened. I lifted my eyes to my grandmother. She smiled faintly at the orchid, humming under her breath, lost in her own quiet world, completely unaware of what had just happened. I leaned closer and whispered softly, almost to myself, "Good thing I moved that $200,000 yesterday. Grandma, if you're hearing this and you've ever been the only responsible one in your family, you need to hear what came next after that message. You have to understand Applewood Orchards. This farm isn't just a source of income. It's my grandmother's life's work, her legacy. It's wide and green and beautiful and barely surviving. My older sister, Chloe, is the creative heart of the place. She's given everything she has to keep it alive, transforming the old barn into a cozy cafe and bookstore that feels like something out of a postcard. She manages the cider, the pastries, the atmosphere. I manage the numbers. I'm the accountant. I'm the realist. I'm the one who knows how close we are to going under. The only thing keeping Applewood standing is the family trust fund. Alina established it years ago with $250,000. The conditions were simple and non-negotiable. That money was meant for two purposes only: preserving the farm as a family legacy and covering her growing medical expenses. Her Alzheimer's has been getting worse. Some days she's sharp and sarcastic, just like she used to be. Other days she forgets where the kitchen is. That fund is her protection. It's ours too. And then there are my parents, David and Susan. To outsiders, they're charming, spontaneous, endlessly fun. The kind of people everyone loves at dinner parties, always chasing the next thrilling idea. But to Chloe and me, they've always been something else entirely. Irresponsible. They never treated Applewood like a home. To them, it was an ATM. And over time, they started treating their own mother the same way, as a burden. "We already raised our kids," my father, David, said last month with a laugh. "We're supposed to be enjoying retirement, not signing up to be caretakers." I'm the only one who sees the bank statements. As the accountant and a co-trustee, I had access to everything. And for 6 months, I watched the withdrawals. At first, they were small. Farm repairs, my father claimed. Specialist appointments for Alina, my mother insisted, but the math didn't lie. The repairs were showing up as high-end restaurant charges. The medical consultations looked suspiciously like spa retreats. Month after month, the trust was bleeding out. I tried to warn Chloe. She just shook her head, drained after another 12-hour shift at the cafe. "Aria, please," she sighed. "I don't have the energy for another fight. That's just how they are." What can we even do? That was the problem, wasn't it? Letting things slide because conflict was harder, but the spreadsheets told a different story. At their current pace, Alina's care and the farm itself would be gone in less than a year. This wasn't carelessness anymore. This was theft, and I was the only one positioned to stop it. The real tension surfaced about 3 months ago. Quietly, at first, I walked into the study and caught my father hurriedly closing a browser window. I still saw the images: white beaches, sleek high-rise condos, luxury retirement communities in Panama. "Just daydreaming," he said too quickly, laughing too loud. "You know your mom and always plotting our next big adventure." A week later, my mother started taking calls outside on the porch. Her voice dropped to a whisper. If I stepped out, she'd snap her phone shut. "Just an old friend," she'd say, refusing to meet my eyes. Then they began missing their caregiving shifts. Chloe and I had a strict schedule, balancing work and responsibility. Suddenly, my parents' errands ran long. "Oh, we lost track of time," Mom said breezily, showing up 2 hours late and leaving Chloe wrecked and behind on prep. The weight fell where it always did, on my sister and me. Chloe grew quieter, dark circles etched under her eyes. I grew angrier. The final warning came one evening while I was paying farm bills. My mother sat across from me, pretending to flip through a magazine. "You know, Aria," she said casually, too casually, "you're the only one besides your father and me who has full access to the trust, right?" I looked up from my laptop. "Yes. That's how Grandma arranged it." "Well," she continued lightly, "what if something happened? What if you weren't around? Maybe you should write down the passwords." Just in case. Cold dread pooled in my chest. It wasn't subtle. She wasn't asking for emergency access. She was checking whether I was an obstacle. I don't think that's necessary, I said. The bank handles succession, that's why lawyers exist. Her smile stiffened. Of course, dear, just a thought. I didn't sleep that night. The conversation replayed over and over. They were planning to leave. They were going to abandon us with a failing farm and a grandmother who needed constant care and take the money meant to save both. I considered confronting them. I knew exactly how it would end. Lies, gaslighting, accusations that I was ungrateful and paranoid, all while their suitcases waited quietly in the closet. For days, guilt crushed me. This is what happens when you're the family anchor. You feel responsible for holding everything together and ashamed for wanting boundaries. Standing up to your parents, even when they're wrong, feels like betrayal. I was supposed to keep the peace. Instead, I was preparing for war. That guilt vanished the night I walked into the cafe and found Chloe asleep at a table, her head resting on unpaid invoices, her face drained with exhaustion. Later, I found Grandma Alina in the hallway, staring at an old photo. Tears filled her eyes. Have you seen my husband? She whispered. I can't find him. My grandfather has been gone for 10 years. In that moment, everything became clear. I wasn't betraying my family. I was protecting it, my real family, my sister, my grandmother. My parents had already chosen themselves. Now it was my turn. The next morning, I went to the bank. I met with the manager, Mrs. Chen. I had the authority. I didn't need permission. I opened a new protected account, the Alina Care and Applewood Preservation Fund. The only signatories were Chloe and me. Then I transferred the money. $200,000 moved cleanly into the new account. I documented everything, every contribution Chloe and I made, every expense designated for Alina's care. I left $50,000 behind, just enough to look untouched, just enough to bait them. I walked out shaking but unbreakable. I had the proof, I had the receipts, the trap was set. That night confirmation came. I overheard my parents whispering in the kitchen long after Chloe and Grandma were asleep. We deserve this, Susan said, her voice hard. She's lived her life. I'm not wasting mine changing diapers again. But the girls, David started weakly. They're adults, she snapped. Aria has her accounting. Chloe has her little cafe hobby they'll manage. 50,000 is plenty. It's our turn. That place in Panama is perfect. My blood went cold, changing diapers. That's how she described her own mother. And $50,000, she truly believed that was enough to justify abandonment. And then I understood. This wasn't just selfishness. It was main character syndrome. My parents believed they were the heroes of the story. Everyone else, me, my sister, even their sick mother, were background characters, extras, and when a subplot becomes inconvenient, you cut it. They didn't see it as abandonment. They didn't see it as betrayal. They just saw it as the start of their cycle, and we were all just collateral damage. That cold, terrifying realization sent me straight to my office. If they were capable of that, what else were they capable of? My accountant brain took over. No more emotions, just facts. I stayed up all night. I wasn't just checking the trust fund anymore. I was running a full-scale audit of Applewood orchards. I pulled every loan document, every title, every bank statement from the last 5 years. I knew what to look for. I knew the red flags. And at 3:00 in the morning, I found it. It was buried in a stack of refi documents. 3 months ago, my parents had secretly taken out a HELOC, a home equity line of credit against the farm. They had forged my grandmother's signature as the primary owner. The amount $70,000. The money was already gone, withdrawn in cash and wire transfers over the last 12 weeks. They had been paying their personal debts. They had been buying their plane tickets. They had been funding their escape. I looked at the due date. The first payment on that fraudulent $70,000 loan was due in 30 days. When it defaulted, the bank wouldn't just call. They would seize the farm. They would seize my grandmother's home. I finally understood. The $50,000 they were leaving behind in the trust wasn't a mercy. It was a joke. It wouldn't even cover the down payment on the new debt they had secretly created. They weren't just planning to leave us. They were planning to sink the ship with all of us on it. The next morning, my parents were impossibly cheerful. My father, David, was whistling as he made coffee. My mother, Susan, was helping grandmother Alina with her breakfast, spooning oatmeal for her with a tenderness I hadn't seen in years. They were dressed up, just a few errands to run in the city today. Mom said, kissing Grandma's head. It was a long, lingering kiss, a performance. We might be back a little late, so don't wait up for us. Be good girls, my father added, patting me on the shoulder. As they walked out the door, I watched their car pull down the long gravel drive and disappear onto the main road. The house suddenly felt too quiet. Chloe found me in the kitchen, nervously wiping down a clean counter. "They're just running errands, right?" she asked, her voice small. "Yeah," I said, not looking at her. "Just errands." The hours ticked by noon, 300 p.m. 5:00 p.m. Chloe kept checking her phone, pacing the floor of the cafe. I just sat at the kitchen table working on the farm's real budget. I felt strangely calm. The waiting was the worst part. At 6:30 p.m., just as I was helping Grandma with her dinner, my phone chimed. I looked at the screen. It was the text from my mother. "Panama bound, the transfer went through. We're starting our new adventure. We need this. Take care of Alina. We'll be in touch." I read it twice. My hands weren't even shaking. I walked over to Chloe, who was just closing the cafe, and handed her the phone without a word. She read it and her face crumpled. It wasn't anger, it was just devastation. She sank onto a stool, her shoulders shaking, and just sobbed. "They really did it," she whispered. "They just left her. They left us." I wrapped my arms around her. I held her tight as she cried for our parents, for our grandmother, for our broken family. But as I stared out the window into the dark orchard, I felt absolutely nothing. No sadness, no anger, just a cold, hard resolve. I was ready for this. I let them have their fantasy for exactly 48 hours. I was logging payroll when my phone rang again, an unknown number. Country code Panama. I smiled, right on time. I let it ring 3 times, then answered. "This is Aria Voss." A professional, slightly stressed voice came on the line. "Miss Aria Voss. This is manager Ricardo from the Panama Vista Luxury Retirement Community. I'm calling about a Mr. David and Mrs. Susan. They listed you as their financial contact." "I'm aware of them," I said, keeping my voice flat. "We have a situation." The manager stammered my parents' $50. Null, no, residency deposit had been declined. Through the phone, I heard my furious father, David, screaming that I had stolen their money and left them stranded. "I didn't steal anything, Dad," I replied, my voice calm. "I protected the trust. I protected Grandma's money. The 50,000 you tried to grab was all that was left." My mother, Susan, took the phone, hysterical, pleading, "Fix this. You've ruined our dream." "My dream," I shot back, "was to keep this farm alive and my grandmother safe. You abandoned your own mother. I gave them a one-time offer, enough for 2 economy tickets back home." David roared. "He would report me for theft and have us thrown off the farm. Go ahead and try," I challenged. "When you do, to be ready to explain the fraudulent zero HELOC loan